Good day. My name is David Martinez, and welcome to National Mortgage Advice Program with Jeff Moore. Jeff, good morning. How are you today?
Great, David. I'm terrific. It's unbelievable.
It is an unbelievable time that we're living in right now. But National Mortgage Advice, tell us about what you're about.
National Mortgage Advice is a bridge lender and broker for investment property, and that also includes residential investment property. And by that I mean that if you do not live in the property, then it is an investment.
Okay.
Okay?
Makes
So
sense.
that doesn't include the house that your Aunt Mary left you on the Cape. That's your second home.
Oh, okay. So
I can't finance that unless you rent it.
in full-time rental, not
Yes.
not Airbnb-ish.
No, you've got to have a history of renting it.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's your second home. And some people will come to me and say, "Well, I own a house in Wellesley, but I'm going to move. You know, I've got a single-family home in Wellesley, but I'm going to move to a two-family in Malden." Well, nobody's going to believe that. It's implausible.
Right.
But if you have a two-family house in Malden, and you say, "I'm going to move to a house in Wellesley as my primary," but you have a lot of equity in Malden, I'll finance Malden for you,
Okay.
and you can take that money and go to Wellesley, because Malden is no longer your primary home.
Right.
And everybody believes you'll move from a two-family to a single-family.
Single-family,
Whether
and then
it's
rent out.
Malden, Wellesley, Chelmsford, Lexington, it doesn't matter. I'm just using those towns as examples.
Sure.
Mostly for school systems, but
Yeah.
that's the difference. So
Right.
we finance commercial investment property, which could be strip malls,
Oh, it could be.
could be 1,000-unit motels, hotels.
Okay.
Could be.
So it's not limited to a home then,
It's
or
not
a
limited
rental.
to residential housing.
Okay.
It's not limited to rental. It's everything that banks can't or won't do. A lot of times they can't do it because,
Why can't they do it?
well, they can't do it, David, because money is like food.
Okay.
Okay? Now, you and I go play a round of golf, and then we say, "Hey, let's go to dinner." Well, where are we going to dinner? We're going to go for Chinese. We're going to go for a steakhouse. We're going to go to that seafood restaurant down in Newburyport. We're going to maybe what we should do is go to that bar menu place where David's got a little warm spot for one of the waitresses.
Ooh.
Okay? So, but they've all got menus,
Right.
and they all sell food, but their menus are different
And limited.
and limited.
Right.
Yeah, there's only so much you can buy on that menu.
Yes.
You can't get lobster at the Chinese place unless there might be one dish, but you can't get boiled lobsters, steamed lobsters. You can't get a clam bake. You just get that one dish that's chopped up lobster. But that's it. The rest of the menu has nothing to do with seafood.
Yeah.
So now we switch over to money. Well, money, you have to understand, just because you've got a $15 billion bank doesn't mean that they do everything. It just means what they do in their menu, i.e. their underwriting qualifications, they do it very well, and they've built themselves into a $15 billion bank. However, you go over to see my friend Fred at a smaller bank that's like a $4 billion bank. It's a lot of money, $4 billion. Okay. And he can finance most anything. In fact, I finance things with him that three other banks haven't. But the reality is his menu will allow him some leeway because smaller banks don't work on a strict menu. They will push the envelope because they'll keep it what's known as portfolio.
Okay.
See, when you go in for a house or for a 4-family or even for a 10-family, they'll do the underwriting, and then the banks are borrowing at, and I'll use these numbers, they may not be accurate today, but the banks are borrowing from the Fed at 5/8 of a point for their money.
Right.
Now they borrow 5/8 and they lend at 4.25. Then they lend at 4.25, and once they have a package of $100 million, of similar loans, FHA loans or conventional lending. They sell those loans to a pension fund, or they sell those loans back to Fannie and Freddie, and they get paid.
And they're out of those loans.
And they're out of those loans, and they get all their money back.
That's wild.
So then they lend it again. And when they're busy, they borrow more money from the Fed. And sometimes during the 2008, 2007, because there was such loose underwriting, they'd get 103 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
So they may lend a dollar, but somebody's going to pay them 103. In some of those crazy loans, they got 106, 107. So that's the difference is money works to a menu. You have underwriting guidelines. And then there are some banks that, smaller banks especially, they may have 2 or 3 new residential loan officers who had just got a big book of business. So they bring it in, and 2 years later, they've got a disproportionate number of loans in a certain menu item.
Right, certain area,
So
right?
they say, okay, let's slow down. And the way they slow down is their rate might have been 4 1/4, but they said, let's slow this down. So they make their rate 4 5/8.
Right.
So people with 750, 800 credit scores, and they've got plenty of time to shop for refinance. Those people are sensitive to that 3/8 of a point. Okay? Now, that'll slow them down, but then the bank says, we need more residential investment loans to keep their menu equal. Because I used to own restaurants. So, you know, if you've got a fish dish and you're only selling 3 a day, it doesn't work. When you're selling 400
math
burgers.
doesn't work.
Yeah, you're selling 400 burgers, you're selling chicken sandwiches, 150, and you're only selling 3 fish dishes a day.
Right.
Well, the fish is going bad, the cooks aren't used to it, it's not a good
that's right.
item.
Yeah.
So you either lower your price or you raise the item, and you have to balance it out so that every one of the items in your menu, remember, menu equals qualifications and underwriting guidelines. So on a dollar, it's 20 cents for FHA, it's 30 cents for commercial residential. You break it out so that all aspects of your menu are being sold at a good rate and balances out the bank's balance sheets, because
Right.
auditors come in.
Yeah.
And you have to have that.
And they want to have that.
And they want to have
clear-
that.
They want to have a clear line. You have too much of this or
Right.
too little of that. You want to have that clear line for the banks. Are banks also slower moving than what you do?
Molasses in December.
They have to be, right? Because they're
Yeah,
so
very
big.
slow. They're very slow. They're very slow. Let me just do one quick story on menus, and I'll get to this. I'll get to why I'm much faster than a bank, and I'm a lot less expensive than a partner.
Okay.
My friend Alex came to me through a FHA lender, and they couldn't find the money for him because it was a HUD purchase. He stole this house up in the Lakes region. I mean, stole it. The appraisal's $350. He's buying it for $200.
Wow.
But he chased it, and this is like the 4th time he's been with HUD, and he persevered. But he has to close 28th, and his regular lender said that he probably could be, maybe, those are dangerous words when you hear them from a lender,
Right.
might happen. Then 10, 15 days went by, and he says, this isn't happening. I don't have the money. I only have half of that money. So one of the loan officers, and this is a commercial world I live in, so I do pay referrals. One of the loan officers that was conventional, actually it was the real estate broker, sent him to me. I sat with him, what's today? Today's Friday. I sat with him on Tuesday morning. He was very good, very particular. He had the information I asked him
He had
for on Monday
organized.
night.
That's key, right?
Sat with him on Tuesday morning, knew that it was underwritten, called one of my partners, said, I got this, this, and this, and this. And he says, yeah, sure. I says, how much does he want? He said, well, he wants $350. I said, we may not be able to give him $350. We'll give him 3 1/4. And you're saying to yourself right now, if you're in this game, why would anyone lend 3 1/4 on a $350 appraisal if they're buying $200? Well, the house has to be repaired.
Right.
So it's the purchase plus rehab.
Okay.
Okay, so now we got I gave him the purchase, the $200. We gave him all the closing costs in the loan. We gave him 6 months interest. Okay, we also gave him the rehab money. Wow. Okay, so now when he rehabs, we know that this place is going to be worth about 4.25.
Yeah, it's
All
'cause
right.
it's only going to go up.
Here's the key: the bank couldn't do that. We do it because he also owns a multi-unit building in Newburyport. It's worth about $1.2 million. It has a $200,000 mortgage on it.
Wow.
So the banks will not cross-collateralize one commercial with another commercial.
Why wouldn't they do that?
Well, some of them do it, but it takes 70 days.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
It takes
the slow
70
moving.
days.
It's the slow moving.
They
part.
have to get an appraisal on the purchase. They have to get appraisal on this. Then they have to get a licensed general contractor to tell you how much the bathrooms are going to be, how much the floors are going to be.
Right.
Then they've got to get someone to say, okay, well, how much are the tiles going to be? Is this guy? Well, let's see the insurance. And it's all very legitimate because they owe it to their shareholders.
Sure.
Well, here's a key. Myself and my friends, take a good guess who my shareholders are.
You guys.
Our children.
Oh well, that's true.
I'm old. Okay, I don't know whether I'm going to be here next month.
Yeah,
You know,
no
and I've got
guarantee.
friends that are older than I am.
Right.
But I started doing this in '88. So our children are the shareholders, and that doesn't mean just because we get a higher interest rate that we'll lend 100%. Exactly the opposite. We are conservative, but we find a solution for the loan scenario.
Right.
On your radio station, I believe I have an ad that says, I am the Bill Belichick of finance.
Yes.
Okay? I may not close every deal, but I got a pretty good record.
Yeah.
And I am the mortgage coach. I am not a banker. I want everybody to understand that.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
I did not come into this profession being a banker. I came into this profession owning a restaurant on Nantucket, and I happened to have a few extra hours because my behavior changed, and I started buying and selling property.
Did you really?
And people started asking me, how am I doing it? How am I doing that? And I learned on my feet, starting in '88.
Really?
And at one time, I owned quite a bit of waterfront property with the restaurants, and I left there in the early '90s, and I continued this profession and got out of the restaurant profession.
Yeah, restaurant. I've worked in a restaurant. That's a tough profession.
Yeah, I like going to bed before 10 o'clock.
Well, and it owns you.
Yeah,
There's
it
no
does
way
own
around
you.
that.
So I backed into this profession as a developer. Therefore, my mindset is completely different. But I've learned enough to be able to relate to banks.
Yeah.
Now, I have probably, I never really counted them, but I think in my ad I say I have 8 family offices or 10 family offices that I can call people up and I don't have to tell them my last name. I mean, I've been dealing with these fellas for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I also have 8 local banks down Rhode Island, down in Connecticut, a couple, most of them in eastern Massachusetts, 1 or 2 out in western Mass, and I have a growing bank, a very large bank in Maine. Now, the reality is this: that I'm old, and I'm not. Most of the time, I do not call up a loan officer. Most of the time, because of my age and how long we've been around, I'm calling up one of the directors of the bank.
Right.
At the very least, a senior VP, loan officer, whatever title corporate decides to give them. But I know that they've been in business 30, 40 years doing this.
Yeah.
You know,
But you have the past relationship with them.
I have a
as well.
past relationship with him, and it takes me. For my friend Alex, I talked to while he was in my office. I told my friend what the deal was, and he says, "If everything you're telling me, Jeffrey, is valid, it's done."
Wow.
So that was Monday night phone call,
Right.
where he got turned to me. Tuesday morning, he got a term sheet on Wednesday morning. He got a commitment letter on Wednesday afternoon.
That's amazing. huh?
Okay, they've done the title yesterday.
The bank, it would have been September. Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it would have been August anyway, 60 to 70 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so now my friend Alex is he's in. He's done. He's sleeping like a baby at 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
Because the deal's done.
In just a few days.
In a
which is
few
amazing.
days. Now, here's the good news. Because of his building in Newburyport, and because it's an investment property, because he's living somewhere else.
Right.
It's the investment property in Newburyport, and we've got the his dream house where he wants to do little weddings and maybe
right.
raise some chickens and whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
In the Lakes region.
Yep.
Okay. No down payment.
Wow.
He doesn't have to put any money up.
And that's because of the Newbury port.
And that's because of Newbury.
And the
Exactly.
mortgage difference
And
between
the mortgage
value.
difference. Now we've got what's known as LTV. Now a weak loan officer will come at you and say, well, we got to get the LTV lower because the CLTV doesn't cover it, and the DSC is much too low for this, so I'm not sure we can do this deal. And the back end ratios, we've got to get 1.25. What the H does that mean?
Yeah.
To a fellow that's a really, really good electrician or plumber or school teacher or insurance salesman, you're talking a different language.
Mm-hmm.
So if you run into a real estate broker or a loan officer that starts giving you the acronyms within his industry, run.
Yeah, they speak in Chinese.
They're speaking Chinese. They're weak in their presentation because they either don't have the time
Right.
to do it, or it's denigrating to speak to someone in those words. Okay, just run if someone's there. The DSC, the debt service coverage. Okay, the debt service coverage normally on most banks is 1.25, and all that means is that if it costs you $1, you better be getting rent for $1.25.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it means.
Right.
That's it. Now, there are hedge funds out there now, because we have such a strong real estate, they will lend you money that needs to be rehabbed. Say
Okay.
you've got a 10-unit building with 3 of them are burnt out, so you're not getting all your rent.
Right.
But you've got a debt service coverage, i.e., cost you $100, and you're taking in $1.01, but you got 3 empty apartments.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they give you a little rehab money. You fix the 3 apartments. On your projections, you're going to have 1.25 or better on your debt service coverage, which is DSC. Loan to value is pretty simple. It's worth 300, your loan's 200, it's a 66% loan to value.
Wow.
So that's what that means, okay? Your back end ratio, you've got to find out. I mean, you can't have, if you have a cash flow from another property, like the property my friend Alex is in
Right.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, sure.
So there's no cash flow for him, but he's got the cash flow from the multi-unit building in Newbury.
Yeah.
So his back end ratio of all the cash coming in the door and his expenses is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And they use a back end ratio with residential too. And I don't want to talk too much about residential primary home because I dropped that license. I had that license for years, and frankly, with Dodd-Frank and everything else, unless you're working for a big corporation,
it's
there's
too
too
much.
much paperwork.
Too much paperwork, too risky.
Too much paperwork, and it's just they come in. The audits alone for a small shop like mine, $4,800, $5,500.
Really?
Yeah, and then they come in. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
But they use that back end ratio with residential property also.
So this Alex was almost a perfect situation.
Yeah,
For you.
he was smart,
Yep.
and he needed the money, and
But
he
he had
understands.
he had everything lined
He
up
understands
really well.
Yeah. Let me if
We have time. We had 10.
If you
have 12 more minutes.
okay, if you're out there, I mean, just on the difference, because we charge somewhere between my rates are somewhere between 4.5 and 14, depending on the deal, the speed, and the risk.
Right.
Okay, but let's just, if you've got a pen and pencil, let me just show you the difference. We will close bridge money, it's called, hard money, it's called, short-term lending. We will close in 15 to 30 days, okay, at 12% simple interest. Now, 12% simple interest for $350,000 is $3,500 a month. The bank will close in 60 to 70 days. They are going to charge conservatively 6%, okay? $350,000 on a 20-year term, 5-year fixed, is $2,507 a month. Okay, the difference is $992. Okay, now a good developer somebody that actually gets his son out of bed, gets the nephew out of bed, and he and the 2 boys actually go to work on Saturday.
Right.
Okay, and he's up there Sunday making a list of what they're going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy that is on top of it, or like I said, the teacher, this insurance salesman, they're there in the morning with coffee for their contractor. These guys, 4 months. So the difference between 12 and 6 for 4 months is $3,900, $3,969. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, as a developer, if your deal doesn't have room for close to $4,000 because you bought it fast, you're getting it done, you're on the market, if it doesn't have $4,000 in there, then you shouldn't be in that deal.
Right.
Because you need your after repair value, ARV, that's another acronym that weak people use, to people not in the industry. Your ARV's got to be 1.25. And, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, let me explain how that works. Why we're cheaper than we're faster than banks, that's been proven.
Right.
Why we're cheaper than banks, or we'll class the place up a little bit, less expensive than banks.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay? So you bring in a partner. You bring in a partner like yourself. Okay, you got an 800 credit score, you got $400,000 in the bank, and you've got a big signature, and you're going to go to your bank. Okay? So everybody knows you, and you signed for the loan.
Okay.
With your buddy Alex. Now, you make the ARV on the 350, okay, it's worth $437,000 after you get through. As a developer, okay, you made $87,750. Not a bad hit for 4 months. Maybe you sell it in 5 months, right?
Yeah.
You get one of my brokers, and I know you'll sell it in 5 months. Okay? So as partners, you made $43,750. But you were the guy that got up on Saturday. You were the guy that got your nephew out of bed to go to work with you, or your son.
Right.
You were the guy that was there Sunday morning in the rain or the cold in the winter, making a list of what you're going to do for the week. And your partner was enjoying a Starbucks on his way to his white collar job. Okay?
Yeah.
Or on his way to running his own plumbing company. But he's your partner. He's the money partner, right?
Right.
So on the $87,000 that you would make, your partner made, with the deduction of the difference in interest, the $3,900, because you paid 12%, but you got started in 15 days instead of 70. You deduct that, and you made $83,000, $83,530 for the developers. Okay, but guess what? You only got half of that. He's your partner. But if you were willing to pay the $3,900 to me and listen to the coach, you would have walked away with $83,000.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the best story of my life when I thought that I knew everything when I was 33. Actually, I was 35.
You're 35, so you thought you already knew everything about the business.
I knew everything. I owned a successful nightclub restaurant.
Yeah.
I knew everything. I had plenty of time in my hands. I looked at a piece of land on the water on Nantucket that overlooked Spain. And all the houses to the right or the left all had 25, 28, 30,000 square foot lots. But I went to the tax assessment on Nantucket, Baxter Road, and they listed it as a 19,000 square foot non-conforming lot because it was only 19,000. Well, a conforming lot had to have 20,000 square feet.
Okay.
However, there was a paper road between them. So there were two lots. One was 8,900, the other one was whatever it was, 10,000 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said, this is wrong. There's something wrong here. Well, in 1930, they didn't include down the bluff to the private beach.
Oh, interesting.
So that wasn't included. So I went to my lawyer, great lawyer on Nantucket. If you're ever on Nantucket, I'd recommend no one else other than Sarah Alger. And I said, this seems wrong to me. And do I not know what I'm doing, or can you double check? She double checked it and said, yeah, fine. I put down $50,000 non-refundable. I'm figuring anybody in the world's going to finance this thing, right? I got two lots overlooking Spain with a private beach on Nantucket.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh, yeah, right.
Yeah, ensconce it. There's only probably 65 houses in this bluff.
Wow.
Nobody would finance. Wow. And I had the down deposit money. I mean, I had it. Nobody would finance it because they didn't think it was worth it. I wound up with Jackie Seidel. God bless him. He's passed away now. He used to have a little place up in Braintree. Perhaps you've heard of it, U.S. Trust.
Yeah.
Okay, he was the president, and he called me up and he said, Mr. Moore, why would you ever put down $50,000 non-refundable to buy an estate property? You're going to lose your $50,000. I said, Mr. Seidel, I know something that others don't know. He said, well, what is that, Mr. Moore? And of course, he was 60, so he was ancient as far as I was concerned.
right.
I was
I get you.
35 years old.
Yeah, I understand.
So he said, I told him the thing, and he said, it's one 22,000 square foot piece of land, and it's one 24,000 piece of land. It has a paper road between it, and it's approval not required, and I can subdivide 24 hours after I buy it. He says, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure. He asked me who my lawyer was. The next morning, I got a call from my lawyer, and she says, who is Jack Seidel, and why do I have $1.4 million? He gave me back my deposit.
Did he really?
He did the work. Make a long story short, 70 days after I bought it, I sold the empty lot because one lot had a beat to death summer house. When it rained,
It rained.
it rained in the house. Okay.
Yeah.
70 days after I bought it, I sold the empty lot for $1,050,000.
Really?
And the best brokers on Nantucket, Maury Real Estate, Sharon Doucette and her son Gary Wynn, they helped me with that. They got their commission for that, turned around, sent $1 million up to Jackie Seidel. And he said, well, this is a bullet. I said, Mr. Seidel, I'm pretty sure I can sell the other lot too before the year, because hard money is usually 1 or 2 years maximum.
Right.
And the market was 6%. Jackie was charging me 8.5%. So it's hard money, but I paid it, no problem, and I had it. 11 months later, Jackie calls me back up and says, so, Jeffrey, this is a bullet. We will take the property at 12 months. I said, Mr. Seidel, I understand what you have to do. And you got to remember, the bank couldn't lend me the money. Jackie and his friend, FX Messina, lent me the money. Mm-hmm. Okay? They lent me the money, and I had sold the house before 12 months went up. So we closed out. I made $600,000. However, Jackie Seidel charged me $80,000 exit fee. There's the hard money,
Yeah.
right? They
Right.
charged me the interest on the end, not crippling me on a monthly basis.
Right.
So I called up and I said, Mr. Seidel, I said, don't you think $80,000 is a little strong for an exit fee? And he said, again, he's 62 years old, started that little bank in his kitchen when he
Yikes.
was about 28 years old.
Nice.
And he's still today very well thought of, smart man, knew a deal. So he says to me, Jeffrey, let's just say we did know each other, and you were lucky enough to be my partner. I said, we would have made $600,000 in your end because you're a smart young man, and you did what you said you were going to do. You would have made $300,000. But because we didn't know each other, and because we weren't partners, you made $520,000. So I ask you, and he always called me Mr. Moore, what is it? What way do you want to do business in the future? Because we will be doing business in the future. And I said, Mr. Seidel, I think I want to do business the same way that we just did it. And he laughed, and he said, call me Jackie. We just made money together.
Yeah.
True story. I was there. It was my deal. And the reality is, that's when I started lending money for hard money to
In
help,
that way.
In that way
In
to
that way.
help people out of a situation. Because I deal from the solution. I don't try and fit it into my menu.
Right.
I'm not a bank. I
Yeah.
deal from the solution.
You threw the menu away. You're a deal maker.
Right. I don't want to know how it won't work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Don't tell me how it
Don't
won't
tell-
work.
yeah, that-
Don't
any-
tell me how it won't work.
Anybody could do that.
We've all seen handsome 6'4" men with 5'3" women, and the reverse of that.
Yes.
Don't tell me how it's not going to work.
Right.
When it works, and the circumstances don't mind. Alex almost didn't tell me about his property in Newburyport, but once I asked the right questions, I found out. Now he's there for nothing.
Well, Jeffrey, let's wrap it up. Let's tell people how they get in touch with you and who should be getting in touch with you.
Anyone that wants to purchase investment property for their cash flow, you want to buy a 2-family, you want to buy a 4-family, you have some money. You have to have some money in the game, or you have to have another building that we can cross-collateralize.
Right.
We can usually tell you within, Alex was unusual, but I can usually tell you within 5 days after, this is the important part, after you've given me the documentation I asked for.
Yeah.
Anywhere from 3 to 5 days after that all comes in, and it's National Mortgage Advice.
That's amazing.
I'm Jeffrey Moore. You will speak to me at 781-820-1745. Ask me any questions. You know, I have some recommended real estate brokers and a couple of lawyers that I worked with for years. I've got one fellow, Bill Sheehy, right here in Amesbury, is a wonderful guy, smart. Will help with the closing. Lisa Mead has done work for me over in Newburyport. David Hadlock and I have probably closed 1,000 transactions between us in the last 15, 20, 25 years I've been working with David.
Nice. So you've seen a lot of things.
Yeah. And you know what they say about good judgment? It comes from experience. Well, where do you get the experience? Well, that comes from bad judgment.
Yeah, you learn, right? You live and you learn, my friend. Jeffrey, thanks so much. Best of luck, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you very much. Good talking to you, David.